Hey everybody, it's Regan Sample, real estate agent here in Longmont. And today I'm sitting with Longmont City Council member Aren. He's running for re-election for the at-large seat. I've invited all the people running for city council and for mayor an opportunity to come in and talk with us and let the residents of Longmont know more about them and why they're running. So there's 2 seats for at-large. Aaron's running for re-election, so thanks for taking time to talk to us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to go ahead here and we're going to start. Our timer, I've offered everyone 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and start. Just go ahead and tell us more about you and why you're running for council.
Well, I think there's a certain amount that is kind of known commodity in the sense that I've been a city council member for the last 4 years. Not that I think this is qualification or disqualification, but I was born and raised in Longmont, and so it holds a special place in my heart. I did leave after I graduated high school and go off to college elsewhere, and so I haven't been here the whole time. I don't need to make that some sort of concept. I moved back in 2013, right during the flood. Oddly enough, I'd moved back to Colorado in 2006, but I was in Westminster and moving back to Longmont during the flood, and halfway moved, I should say, half of my things. That's when the flood completely cut off the city from north-south routes.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had half of my stuff. I had to call the landlord and say, hey, it's going to be a couple of days, obviously. And so I moved back in 2013, and the flood was obviously a big thing. It was once in a 100-year, 500-year thing, depending on who you talk to and what flood experts you're talking to. As such, I got real involved because I'd moved back to Longmont. It was kind of a fresh start. I was a performing musician before that, and that era of my life had kind of come to an end. So new beginnings. Fairly recently started working in the real estate business as an appraiser, and so I just wanted a fresh start, and I came back to my hometown, and there were obviously challenges because of this recent flood event,
Sure.
as well as finding out about kind of what was going on as far as politics in Longmont, and I wouldn't say politics so much as governance, how the city was working at the time, because I think local issues are more about governance than they are about politics per se. Politics can remain at the state and federal level for all I care about it. So at that point, I decided to get involved in a few different ways, be it nonprofits. I was on the Arts Longmont Board of Directors, getting involved with the city. I was a planning and zoning commissioner for a couple of years, and then also trying to make sure that I'm a Latino. My last name is Rodriguez. My family, the Rodriguez family, has been in Colorado since like the 1500s. That's neither here nor there, but in the sense that I want to make sure that anybody that has the right to vote should be able to vote. And so I spent some time working as an outreach and inclusion leader for the Boulder County Democrats, and it really was specifically nothing more than going to folks' neighborhoods and registering those who were able to vote that had not already registered. It was nothing nefarious or trying to vote build in any sense. We didn't do it in a partisan concept, even though we were a partisan group. And so that's where I got my footing, and kind of that experience just led one thing to another. And the next step was, a lot of folks encouraging me to run for council 4 years ago. And as a first-time candidate, I was, very fortunate to have been elected, and I appreciate that very much. Going forward, though, for re-election, I think the big thing is that we're losing a lot of institutional knowledge on city council. Brian Bagley has been on city council for about 10 years, I believe. He's gone. He's decided that he's had enough of it,
Sure.
and for personal reasons, and he's leaving the council. Polly Christensen, who's been on for 8 years, is term limited, and so she's gone. That's 18 years of institutional knowledge in the middle of an unprecedented time, regardless of your opinion of the pandemic and vaccines and masking and all that. It's still a tenuous time from a city council standpoint because we don't have our own health department, right? We are relying on consistency between the state and the Boulder County Public Health department to help advise us, because we don't have any doctors and we don't have a health department in the city of Longmont. So it would be unwise for us to dictate public health orders when we don't have a health department. So we're trying to keep that consistency going, as well as we don't know what's going to happen So some continuity, I think, is important. I understand the desire of people to want to wholesale change the city council, especially if you disagree with a lot of the directions that have been coming out of council in the last 4 years. Some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. I mean, my voting record is fairly transparent as far as why I voted the way I did in each circumstance, and it's not necessarily consistently towing a line as some people think there's a cabal or some silent group that runs city council. Are there some members that listen to them more than others? Yes, but I don't think that it's truly the evil mastermind that some folks make it out to be. And so, in my opinion, my reelection would provide some of that continuity and institutional knowledge that should stay on city council, as well as the fact that some of my specific skill sets really lend itself to a lot of the challenges that are truly facing Longmont right now. As a real estate appraiser, a former planning and zoning commissioner, I'm probably more conversant in city code concerning development and growth than most of my colleagues on city council, which I assume that most of them would say the same thing, is that they look to me as at least maybe not the decider, but a guiding voice in how the codes are structured, how the system is structured, how planning and zoning, functions. And I think that's extremely important because there's this huge debate right now on zero growth as well as how the city develops. And first and foremost, I want to say anybody that's zero growth proponent is absolutely opposed to affordable housing. And anybody that's a zero growth proponent is asking for us to boulder their Longmont. Not a favorite term of mine, but if you're asking for zero growth, that's exactly what you're going to get.
Sure, it's a term that comes up in all the campaign forums and all that, the boulderization.
Absolutely. It's a frequent statement, and I get that. I understand where people are coming from because Boulder has historically been, a liberal, very, very liberal example in our state that I think is much more liberal than our city council is as far as their policies are concerned. Now, if you ask me a different question about Boulder City Council, which we're not here to talk about, I'll tell you that they're actually very conservative in a lot of ways too. Neither here nor there. But that's also how money changes the community, and that's exactly what we would be looking at if we go to zero growth, which I think is irresponsible and definitely will not address a lot of the housing needs that not just Longmont, but regionally we face, but at least how we deal with it in Longmont.
So that's one thing I was going to ask you. What you consider the biggest challenges or issues, and it seems like you're talking about housing and some other things that you just were referencing.
Sure.
Going through the pandemic, some consistency on council as far as governance and experience, and the way that they plan going forward. Is that accurate? Am I saying that right? Or?
Sure, and I think this is exactly, people talk about sometimes council getting out of its lane and overreaching and things like that, but the core of my message is that is surrounding what every city council should really be concerning itself with, which is development, how it grows, the economy, how we deal with our businesses, regulation and non-regulation, as well as the infrastructure needs, as not just rates for our consumers, but also what's our supply, say in water, and how are we sourcing our electricity, and what is the security of our infrastructure as far as catastrophic failures in water mains or storm sewage drainage and things like that. For instance, the flood was an example of a catastrophic failure in storm drainage. Just recently, we had along, I believe it was Collier, because we have it's an older town in certain sections, and so we have some older infrastructure, and we had 2 sinkholes that happened just a couple weeks ago. And while not catastrophic, they were considered serious failures of our infrastructure system. And this was specifically the storm drainage system, which we didn't even start funding as a utility until 1984, is what I was told. And as such, we didn't truly start funding it adequately for maintenance and replacement until just recently. And so that's something, having said that the entire city went through the flood, we need to pay closer attention to than we have necessarily, because when there's no problems, there's no problems. But as soon as an epic failure happens, then Lord, you're going to hear about it, and you're going to have to do something about it, and it's going to cost money. So it's better to get in front of it before, because as we know, construction costs, material costs, labor costs keep going up regardless. Inflation, supply chain issues, things like that. And so doing it sooner than later is definitely probably a more prudent approach than waiting for something catastrophic to happen.
Sure. So we're just about to run out of time here. 1 second. We're about at 10 minutes. Before we go, let me just ask you one last question here. And I know that what do you think people will be able to expect from you if you're reelected on council?
Well, I think I have been a steady hand, and I will continue to be a steady hand. I don't necessarily play a lot of the games that I see being played politics-wise in the city of Longmont, and so you'll still see me be not speaking too much just to hear myself speak, making sure that folks know why I vote for the things I vote for and why, and as well as just being a steady hand for the folks that want to come up and address their grievances with the government, and allowing them their piece and their time, and to do it in a respectful manner.
Hey, there you go. Awesome. And we were right at 10 minutes. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us, Council Member Rodriguez. Check out his website for more information about Aren Rodriguez. Check out Longmont City website for information about all the candidates. Election day is November 2nd. Ballots are in your mailbox October 11th. Second week of October, they'll be out there, so keep an eye out for that. Register to vote. Get informed. Aren Rodriguez said it. I agree. Our local issues affect our day-to-day life more than our state and federal. So be informed. Learn about these candidates, and don't forget to vote on by November 2nd. So thanks for watching. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.